Our team's goal has been to prove the existence of the paranormal through real, legitimate, scientifically documented evidence. Since the formation of the team, we feel that we have done just that.
What the
Okay, I thought I heard something walking down there.
It's doing both.
But the world is full of videos that treat the supernatural as a joke, and would rather sell you a hoax for views rather than the real for credibility. So we decided it was time to up our goals and return to one of the most notoriously known prisons in the entire world. The old Montana State Prison. One of the darkest places in Montana's history. From countless deaths to brutal conditions.
They found out that steam pipe had burst, cooked him alive.
To one of the bloodiest riots ever.
The last heroic act they could do was to kill all the hostages they had.
This is an investigation like no other. The old Montana State Prison, located in Deer Lodge, Montana, is a location that is notoriously well known in the paranormal space. Many paranormal investigators have visited this place, with the likes of the Ghost Adventures crew included.
Billy, come here. I feel exactly what we felt during the interview. Dude, I'm feeling what we felt during the interview up here. Hold on.
You see what I'm talking about? Like right now, heaviness in the chest, it's real.
However, the old Montana State Prison also has a dark history behind it, which listed on some of Montana's most haunted locations, and even America's most haunted locations.
That's gonna be
Well,
at the beginning of
technically,
this.
we also got to go through everything else as well that happened last night. Well, I do at least. So first of all, everybody, Proving Paranormal fans, welcome to the return to the old Montana State Prison. It has been now 3 years.
Yeah.
He's very active with us. Thank you.
3 or 4, yeah.
3 or 4 years since I last visited with my sister back in 2023, so I got 3 years. I did go through and watch it again. I do know some of the things that we captured, but we got a lot more equipment today, which I'll let Devon go over here in a bit. What I need to go through first is some of the big things that have happened leading up to this investigation. First of all, we have our hunts of the year. We have the Sandoval House Ghost Hunt, which came out earlier this year. We were supposed to have another one in between, but right now that is... We'll see what happens with that. Leading up to this one, we've had a lot of different experiences, but more recently than not, yesterday, I was down at the Johnson House Ghost Hunt. For those who don't know the Johnson House Ghost Hunt, it was one of our very first ghost hunts as a team that we did back in 2024, Halloween, where we were kind of testing what equipment we had at the time and doing what we could to communicate. And during that hunt, we used a Ouija board. The last time we used a Ouija board, because Ouija boards are extremely dangerous and I do not recommend it on any ghost hunt investigation, whatever it may be, at all. So, with that being said, here a couple months ago, I took the Ouija board, I hid it away in the closet, and never to be touched again. Until I noticed it was missing. Where to go? I don't know. Until yesterday, down at the Johnson House cleaning my room down there, and I'm going through boxes, and I notice a weird white box sitting in one of the boxes. I'm like, what is this? Clear some stuff off, and boom.
Through boxes and stuff of just mostly electronics and trying to figure out what is sellable, what is not, what is garbage. And I'm going through this one box and looking through, and I just so happened to notice that missing a Ouija board that I lost a while ago is in here.
Next thing I know, house is feeling super heavy, super dark. It's something that followed me home to the Sandoval house and then eventually followed me to other places as well. And finally, I got rid of it some point last night. But on top of that,
While being dropped off by a
while I was
friend.
being dropped off at the house at 3 o'clock in the morning, almost 4 o'clock in the morning, a friend had a little Bluetooth device that's plugged into a radio station that does not work in our town, and it started distorting in weird ways, and I was able to make out the voice of an old man, but she was able to make out it saying thank you. And I'm not sure if that's exactly what that said at all, because afterward it was directly followed by that same dark presence that we've gotten in the St. James Hospital, in the Norris-Nielsen ghost hunt. It's really dark feeling, and I think that was one thing that made me a little nervous coming out, because this was last night, barely hours ago. And then, leading up to it, we are here in Deer Lodge, Montana, at the old Montana Inn. Lovely place, by the way. You could take a look around the room. Like, it's absolutely beautiful in here.
Absolutely beautiful. And super affordable.
Yes, only $150 a night, was it?
120, 150 with tax.
With tax, okay. Yeah, it was, and the lady down there, the receptionist, she was really nice, absolutely kind all the way through. And do gotta mention real quick, if you come look out the window here,
Oh yeah, we're
a very close location.
literally just down on the road. Right, I believe it's that building.
That is the cell house.
Yeah.
That right there is the old Montana State Prison. That's like literally a 2 to 5 minute walk away from this hotel. While we were checking in, we were sitting there talking, and suddenly I get hit really hard by like a really weird, dark, heavy force. I don't know what it was exactly, but it was enough to kind of make me go, whoa, what was that? Devon witnessed it. And I don't know if it was because of this place or because of the prison next door. So we got a lot for you guys. We're excited for the hunt. We are excited to finally be able to get out of town for a hunt for once.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think I'm going to leave it to Devon to take it away on equipment.
So starting us off, we are going to go on and have both the SB7 and the SB11 spirit boxes. Both have treated us very well in our previous hunts. We also have our pairing of the blindfold and headphones to go on and possibly do Estes method later. We also have our wonderful REM pod. During Chance's last hunt at the prison, he went on and got a good bit of activity out of it.
So it's been on every single one of our hunts since.
Yeah, it really has. I believe the best activity that I've seen from it was from the Johnson House.
Johnson House Miners Hotel. Miners Hotel's presidential
Yes.
suite.
I would also like to point out that while the REM pod is going to be used, it should take note that temperature-wise, it should be expected to be experiencing an extreme difference in temperatures given the state of the prison when it was constructed with such poor temperature control that there are certain areas that are hotter and certain areas that are colder.
So what we'll be mostly looking for with the REM pod itself is motion, mostly looking for the colors to light up and stuff like that, which I have witnessed here.
We are also going on bringing out our wonderful little tri-field. I've not gone on and personally used this one much, but I hope to go on see it a bit more in action tonight.
It is still one of our newer pieces of equipment so far, and we're hoping this one will be a good use for it. The first time we actually used it was Sandoval House, but we didn't get a whole lot from it. So
yeah, our wonderful K2 meter has been in with us since also the Johnson House.
Actually, long before the dowsing rods, the EMF, and the REM pod.
Yeah.
Have all been with me since I was actually filming Love Living Life 1.
EVP, right? Yep. Yeah, EVP headquarter. Go on and leave it in the quiet rooms we can get. I
specifically brought that one for the women's prison, especially in the back corner, because there is a cell that is open that can't remember all the history of it, but I can't remember her name either. Contains a spirit who is a little playful around men. If K2 meters and EVP recorders are left on said bed or in the room, it is 9 times out of 10 you'll capture something.
We also have our wonderful dots projectors, our laser grids. Currently have nothing in them, so pew 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 pew. But they will go on and get hit.
Fresh batteries when we're in the prison.
Oh yeah, as we're also having all of our other devices, at least hopefully on chargers, because I see at least one on a charger.
I know that's on my main phone. My main phone / camera is on charger. Those 2 phones and portable chargers are fully charged. The only thing is I know that small phone's probably not going to be on power saving, so I'll have to be sure to switch it over into that when I open it. Which is this phone on power saving?
That phone is on power saving.
Okay.
It needs to go on and get charged.
Yes.
Let's see here. We went through all these guys. We have our signature cat balls. Everybody loves a good cat ball. Maybe.
Some of them might be dead because I know.
They were clacking in
Well, no, it wasn't Norris-Nielsen.
There.
It was Sandoval House. I know like 3 of them ended up being dead, and I did change the batteries in them, but I noticed that some of them don't work anymore, so I'm gonna have to get a new set of them. But I brought what I had, so.
Very fair, very fair. We also have all of our camera equipment, phone stands, all that good stuff. Not very important except for us. And then all of our religious items, being cross, Holy Bible. I see some sage in there.
There's crystals in there too.
Selenite crystals. And otherwise, that's our entire.
That's our entire equipment list for the night.
For
This
the
is not including things
Other
like
people.
my Ovilus and some of the other stuff that I got as well. We didn't want to like overload this hunt with all kinds of different pieces of equipment. Mostly the things that we know work very well. And also the tri-field, because we really want that one to work really well, because that's like a $150 item right there.
We need it to be a good time.
In 1871, the construction of what was known at the time as the Montana Territorial Prison went underway, and the prison itself would open on July 2nd of that same year when it incarcerated its first prisoner. Almost 2 decades later, when Montana officially becomes a state, the prison would officially change its name to the Montana State Prison. In 1890, Warden Frank Conley employed the inmates of the prison to begin building the massive 20-foot sandstone walls that surround the prison, as well as the 1896 cell house. Warden Frank Conley's use of inmate labor for the health, morale, and rehabilitation of the convicts under his watch would later become known as the Conley era, which would span from 1890 when Conley first took the lead as warden to 1921 when he would retire from the prison. Conley's role in the Montana State Prison as warden would catch lots of eyes, whether that be for good or for the worst.
Okay, saw the sawed-off Colt pistol, the penknife, 2 pictures of an inmate, and a guy with a really slicked haircut. All right. As long as you saw those things, you'll know the next story. You'll know what I'm talking about. So back on March 8th, 1908, Conley was doing something kind of innovative. Nowadays, if you are an inmate or even a guard and you have a problem with your lifestyle or your job in prison, you can write on a grievance form, or what they call a kite, and send it off to the deputy warden and the warden, and hopefully in a couple weeks or a month's time you might hear something back. Sometimes you wouldn't hear anything at all. Conley was doing something very different. He was coming over from his offices across the street, and he would sit in the deputy warden's office and he'd host Warden's Court. And he'd do it every Sunday and Wednesday. And what Warden's Court was he would see you face to face so you could air those grievances, and hopefully he would solve it right then and there. And this was not just for inmates, it was for guards too. If you had a problem with your job, you could go see Conley and air your grievances to him. Now, Conley stood about 6'4", weighed almost 300 pounds. He was an excellent marksman, won awards all over the state for pistol, shotgun, and rifle. So you can imagine he's the type of guy that if you were a guard here and came and said, I have a problem with my job, he's probably going to tell you to get bent. On the list that day for Warden's Court, we had 2 inmates, George Rock and William Hayes. George Rock was a murderer. He was here on a life sentence. And William Hayes was a habitual horse thief. He just kept stealing horses and coming back to prison. And so these guys actually lived in a cell together, and George Rock had this knack of really being able to get into your head and make you do what he wanted you to do. So being in a cell with Hayes, he had plenty of time to work on him. And Hayes was actually a trustee. And he was so trusted that a guard would actually give him a pocket knife at night to cut the corns off his feet. And he would always give that pocket knife back until March 8th, 1908, until he put it into his pocket and he started off for Warden's Court. George Rock had his own weapon. He had a slang shot. And what a slang shot is a piece of leather, and he'll take nuts, bolts, screws, anything really heavy and metallic, you'll put it in, you'll take another piece of leather, press it down, and now you have a belt that can do some serious damage to somebody. And so they're being escorted across the yard by Deputy Warden John Robinson, that guy with the really slick hair. And as soon as they get into the building, George Rock takes off that belt and starts whipping him over and over again, cornering him in the room. While Hayes took out the pocket knife, ran into the deputy warden's office right up to Conley, put it to his throat and said, "Give me the keys or I'm going to cut your damn head off." I already told you about Conley. He was a take no crap kind of guy. He got up out of his chair, pulled that Colt pistol that you saw in that picture that he carried every day for 30 years in this town in front of every single inmate who came into this prison. He aimed it at Hayes, pulled the trigger, and hit Hayes right behind the right ear, knocking him to the ground, not killing him. After that, Robinson comes running into the room. He says, "Conley, they got me," and he falls to the floor. And as he falls to the floor, Rock comes running through the door. So Conley pulls the trigger on the gun, and it blows the hat off of Rock's head. And so Rock picks up Robinson and starts using him as a human shield. But I already told you, Conley was an excellent marksman. He waited for his opportunity, and he got it. He pulled the trigger on that Colt pistol, and that bullet will go through the right lung of Rock, lodging in the left one, knocking him to the ground, not killing him. After that, Conley feels this searing pain in his back, like his back is on fire. And as soon as he turns around, Hayes is up with that pocket knife and cuts him from ear to ear, missing his jugular by just 1/8 of an inch. That searing pain he felt in his back was Hayes stabbing him with that penknife over and over again. And so what does he do? He turns around, pulls out the Colt pistol, puts it to Hayes, and click, no more bullets. So what does he do? Picks up a chair, bashes Hayes over the back with it, drags him out of the office, roughs him up a little bit more, and then he kicks that penknife away. And then he has the realization that if Hayes got up, Rock's going to get up. So he rushes back into the office, and it was too late. Rock was standing over Robinson, who was laying on a table, and he was hacking and slashing at his throat over and over again with another pocket knife that he had acquired. In fact, the coroner at Rock's trial testified that Robinson's hole in his throat was so big, you could almost put your fist through it. Now, Rock wanted a speedy trial, and he got one. About a month later, he was hanging on these gallows. Hayes would follow about a year after that. And those are the only 2 inmates that were ever hung within these prison grounds. And the reason for it is because we used to have 2 sets of the galloping gallows that would go all over the state and hang people. They could be built up and torn down, put back on a wagon to go to the next county. Because the law back then is whatever county you committed your crime in was the one you were going to be hung in. It was like retribution for the community. But where did these guys commit their crime?
Right here in the prison.
Right here in the prison. And so Conley, surviving this attack, testified from his hospital bed at Rock's trial with 103 stitches in him from what Hayes did. And he asked the judge if he could hang him, and the judge granted it. So he constructed a jerk-up gallows. So usually you would have a big bag of rocks, bricks. Sometimes if the guy was really big, he was using an anvil. And you would tie a rope around that, it'd come through the pulley system, down through the hole around your neck. And when you push that off, it would jerk you up, and it most of the time snap your neck into. It was a really humane way to die back in the day. But Conley wasn't trying to be humane. Conley was out for vengeance. So what did Conley do? He only filled that bag about halfway. So when they knocked it off, Hayes would go up, Rock would go up, they'd start to strangle. They'd lose air, they'd lose consciousness. When they lost consciousness, their body would go limp. When their body went limp, the noose around their neck would loosen. Their body would automatically start to breathe, and then they'd wake up and do it all over again. It took 11 minutes for Rock to hang and another 12 for Hayes. By the way, this was a public event. We sent out invitations to Butte, Anaconda, and Deer Lodge to all the families saying, "Hey, bring your family, bring your kids, bring your wife, come have a picnic, watch the hanging." Because this was a form of entertainment back then. It's as normal as us going to the movies today. Now, the reason that these bullets did not kill these guys is because the powder inside of them was not mixed right and was ineffective. And to show you how much influence that Conley had, not only on this prison, but the whole town of Deer Lodge and the whole state of Montana, he wrote that company. And he said, "I will never buy your product again, and I will tell everybody not to buy your product." and within 1 year, that business was out of business. Now, for the younger people in the room, we didn't have Instagram, Facebook, and Craigslist. Okay? So that was fast-moving news, right? To shut down a business.
Later, in 1915, Warden Frank Conley would be appointed to the American Prison Congress by Governor Stewart, but would decline, saying that the Congress did not impress him as doing much good. Then, nearly 29 years later, Frank Conley would pass away in Butte, Montana, following a month-long illness that would remain still to this day undisclosed. Throughout the 108 years the prison was in operation, the prison made a name for itself, and not in the best ways. The prison became known heavily for its overcrowding issues, its poor conditions, and most notably, for the ways its inmates were treated.
When Warden Frank Conley came in here, he came into about 140 inmates, and by the end of his first month, he had 198. And so he was slapping them in places like this, basements, broom closets, pretty much anywhere you could put them and slap a lock on. And so he knew we had to do something. So he built the 1896 cell house that you can see in the picture there. It held 256 men and 38 youths. And yes, we had kids here as low as 11 years old. In 1959, we had a 7.3 Richter scale earthquake that damaged that foundation of the building, put some cracks and holes in the ceiling. In fact, when the contractor came through, he could see the sunlight peering through. And he said, okay, you guys can't have them in here anymore. This building has to come down. And so we moved them all out into a dormitory type setting in the bottom of the administration building that you see there. And we tore down that cell house. And then we put this concrete block here. And we built a gymnasium and a classroom building on top of it. Now those were made of steel, and they were so new in '79 that when this prison closed, that they actually took them down piece by piece and moved them out to the new prison, and they still use the gym as their high side gym today. In fact, they just put LED lights in it. They're pretty proud. We did have a guard in the late 1800s who went up on a 10-hour shift. At the beginning of his shift, he actually suffered a heart attack and died from that. And he weighed about 250 pounds and stood about 6 foot. So this is a big guy. And so if you ever go in these towers, it's very hard for me to get up and down them. The ceilings are low, the stairs are narrow, it's hard. See, I couldn't even imagine getting that guy up there. But when he's dead and nobody comes and checks on him for a 10-hour shift, what happens when you die and you lay there?
You're right.
Rigor mortis starts setting in. You start to blow it up a little bit, right? So this guy was actually bigger than when he started. And when they went up and found him, they could not imagine trying to bring him down those stairs. Could you?
No.
So what they did is they broke his arms and legs and they tied him to a chair and lowered him out one of those windows that you see. Now we still have people that come here today and see that spirit of that man, because they come right up to the front desk. How do we get into the wall towers? You can't get into the wall towers. Well, no, I saw somebody up there. Well, which one? And then they come out and show us that's that one. And the funny thing is there's no floor in that one anymore. So nobody can stand in it anyway. So if you see somebody in there tonight, chances are you're seeing one of our past resident guards. Now these two doors right here are the last remaining structures of the 1896 cell house. The top one would go into the guard's catwalk that was inside the cell house, and the bottom one went down to the hall cells, or what the guards like to call the dungeon. And one night, Halloween night to be in fact, in 1966, there was an inmate, Larry, who got put down in one of those hall cells. And he was kicking and screaming and throwing a fit, and the guards just ignored him. Inmates do that all the time. Not even going to worry about it. But he said something really interesting in there that's on record. At one point, he actually said, I feel like there's somebody in here with me. And the guards knew that wasn't true because they were the ones who put him in there. Now down there's about 5 or 6 cells. And there used to be a steam pipe that would run along the wall in L shape into the 1896 cell house to heat it. So it always registered even 70 to 80 degrees down there just in the wintertime. And you can imagine the summer. And so that steam pipe actually ran through the cell that Larry was in. Well, when he stopped making any noise at all, they went in to check on him. And when they went in to check on him, they found out that that steam pipe had burst and basically cooked him alive. On top of it, he was suffering from epileptic seizures. And have you ever heard the expression, you scared me to death? That's a real thing. His heart exploded from the fear. Now, when the coroner couldn't come pick up the body right away, so about 6 hours later, he got here and that body was still registering over 100 degrees. And when they cut him open for the autopsy, his insides were pretty much liquefied. And so they said, you cannot put 2 people down there. The state came in, did a big investigation, and we had to close those whole cells and open the ones that are in the bottom of the 1912 cell house that we'll be going into today. Now, the top 3 windows of this original building were the first time that women actually had cells to themselves. Before that, the women in here were kept in log cabins with bars on the windows in the middle of the yard. And this is also during the construction of the wall. So if you know anything about stone dust, that must have been terrible for those women. You guys are so...
Quiet? Is it bothering you? Are you having stage fright?
No, it's just, I do tours all the time. This is like the quietest group I've ever had.
Well, you know, we're listening.
Yeah.
In 1959, 2 inmates who were more than dissatisfied with the horrible conditions and treatments of the prison and its inmates led a violent 36-hour riot that would become known as the 1959 riots, otherwise known as the Jerry's Riot. Jerry Miles, born in 1915, was a career criminal who spent most of his years behind bars, most notably behind the bars in Alcatraz after organizing a violent mutiny at the federal penitentiary in Atlanta, Georgia, before being deemed an uncontrollable escape risk in 1944. Some of the nicknames Miles had garnered over his years as a criminal were Con Boss or even Little Hitler, thanks to his psychopathic tendencies. Miles was incarcerated at the old Montana State Prison in 1958 following convictions for burglary and theft in the Silver Bow County. Shortly after his arrival in the prison, Miles' behavior led to him being briefly placed in the prison's isolation unit. Miles would later be released in February of 1959 before finding himself back inside the prison's walls just 2 months later. Lee Smart, born in 1940, was serving a 30-year sentence in the old Montana State Prison for the 1956 murder of a traveling salesman near Browning, Montana. Lee Smart would be placed in a cell with Miles, where they would construct and orchestrate the 1959 riots.
So we're going to start talking about our 1959 riot. That was one of our biggest stories here. If you look at all that stuff in the case, that is original to April 16th, 1959 when this happened. Now, this was a pretty big deal back in the day, guys. This made national and international news. We had family members of the guards who were taken hostage that were living over in the UK calling us to make sure that their family was okay. Life magazine and the Evening Post magazine were both here doing articles on it. So that 30-30 rifle that you see in the case was the one used here that day. And under that rifle, you see 2 pictures of inmates. The one on the left is Jerry Miles. The one on the right is Lee Smart. These are 2 out of the 3 main ringleaders of the riot. And so what happened in this building isn't the very beginning, but you will hear different parts of this story as we go along. As long as you pay attention, you'll know the whole story by the end, okay? So, by 3:15 p.m. they had taken over the 1912 cell house. By 3:30 p.m. they had taken over the 1896. And by 3:54 p.m. they had control of this building and the rest of the prison. It took them less than an hour, and there's a good reason, and we'll get to that when we get into the cell house. So now that you know about the 2 inmates, I also want you to take note of the gentleman in between the 2 yellow pieces of paper there. That was Deputy Warden Ted Rothy. And so Jerry Miles came into this building, and he was standing at this hand slot right here, waiting for his headache medication. Because he used to work in the industry. He worked in the upholstery shop. And these guys, we need them to be productive. So the deputy warden said, hey, my office is right here. Instead of him going to the infirmary, waiting around for a couple hours for his headache pills, I can get him out of my safe. He can take them, he can go back to work, be productive. It was a good plan. So it wasn't abnormal to see Jerry Miles standing here at this food slot. And it wasn't abnormal to see him sitting with 2 other inmates here, inmate Thomas and inmate George Alton. The reason being, they worked in the industries too, and these guys hung out together all the time. And so if there's a turnkey guard that's sitting here, this door is closed and locked, and another guard comes through this door to leave for the day, is it smart to open that door with 3 inmates standing there? No. All right, you're officially smarter than the guards that day, because that's what happened. They opened up this door to let that guard through, and when they did, Jerry Miles took a big butcher knife that he had from the kitchen, and ran right to the deputy warden's office up to Ted Rothy and said, you either give me the keys or I'm going to kill you. Ted Rothy picks up his mailbox off his desk and starts to fight Jerry Miles off a little bit. Another guard runs in, sees what's going on, picks up a chair and is about to bash it over Jerry Miles' back. And it startled Jerry Miles to the point he turned around and cut him from elbow to armpit with that butcher knife, and he started to bleed out. That was one of the only guards that got out of here during this riot, because Jerry knew if I don't get him out of here and he dies on my watch, they're going to blame me. And so, as all this is going on, the other two inmates run in, take every guard in this place, and lock them in this small bathroom. And down at the bottom of the stairs outside, holding that 30-30 rifle, was Lee Smart. And when he heard the commotion going on, he knew the plan. He ran right up into this building, made a beeline into the captain's office, aimed down the sights of that 30-30 rifle, pulled the trigger, and shot Ted Rothy right through the heart. Ted Rothy would fall and die before he even hit the ground. And that was the first death of our 1959 riot. Now, like I said, you'll know the rest of the story as long as you pay attention and we go through here. And this is not the very beginning. We'll get to that in the cell house, but it is within the first hour. All right. This would be the social service office. You could also see your chaplain here, maybe make a phone call, send out some mail, get a job. But I like to stop for the social service office because this was the office of Gladys Lightfoot. Gladys Lightfoot, women in the room be proud. She was the very first woman to ever work behind the walls of a male-dominated prison in the United States, not just Montana. She used to work at the DMV across the street, and when that closed down, the guards loved her so much and said, why don't you come over and work with us? And she did. And so she comes up into this 1959 riot story because an inmate ran in here right into her office when everything was popping off in the cell house and said, Mrs. Lightfoot, you need to get your things and you need to pack up, you need to go. There's a disturbance in the cell house. And she did. She picked up all her things and she left. Didn't even ask a question. Now she went to the grave, never telling even her own children who that inmate was. Can anybody tell me why? I heard it. Snitches get stitches. Yeah, those rioting inmates would have killed that other inmate if they found out that he told any staff to get out of here. And so she went to the grave never saying that because she knew if that got out, you just signed his death warrant. Now her daughter also comes into play with this. That's Marlene Lightfoot. She was about 17 years old at the time, and she was down at the Powell County High School in class, sitting next to her best friend, and they were both prison kids. And if you were a prison kid, and something like this happened, they were going to scoop you up from wherever you are and take you to the warden's house that's across the street. And that's where you were going to stay, whether it be a couple hours, couple days, couple weeks. Until this thing was over, that's where you were going to live. And so they picked up Marlene and her friend from class, and they brought her in a patrol car across the street to the warden's house. And as they're getting out of the patrol car, they look across the street, and they see a stretcher coming out of Tower 7 with a white sheet over the body and 2 brown shoes hanging out the end. And her best friend would look at her and say, oh, Marlene, I hope those brown shoes don't belong to somebody that we know. Unfortunately, that was Phyllis Rothy, and that was Ted Rothy, her father, who had just been shot by Smart on that gurney. That really tore her up. She left high school for a while after that, moved out of state with some family. Her and Marlene eventually reconnected at a high school reunion, and they were best friends for the rest of their lives. And Marlene was actually a really good friend of mine, to the point where she didn't even have somebody for Thanksgiving one year, so she spent it at our house. Really good friend of mine. She used to come into the prison all the time. I would be working in my office, just typing away, doing work, and she would be sitting there telling me the history of her life, Deer Lodge, the prison, just going off. I heard so many amazing things. But the reason I bring her up still is because last May I lost Marlene. And I don't bring that up to get sympathy out of you guys. I bring that up because if you have somebody in your life that has lived out a very significant part of history and is willing to talk about it, ask as many questions as you can. Because don't live like me, I regret it. I wish I would have asked that woman so many more questions. And so I can't now. And I can't even go to Phyllis anymore, even though she's still living, because she's in the late stages of dementia. So that history, what we know now, is all we know, and it's all we're ever going to know. So don't take advantage of that time that you have with those people. Ask them as many questions as possible, right? All right. So at the end of this riot, it lasted for 36 hours. We had Butte, Anaconda, Deer Lodge, and Helena Police Force, along with the Montana Highway Patrol and 7 units of the Montana National Guard, all here working on this. By the end of it, the inmates had this tower as a hub, And they also had 19 out of their 23 guard hostages still locked up in cells. And so our plan was, we want to get our guys out fast, and we'll do that first, and then we'll take back our prison. So what we did is we took a Montana Highway patrolman and we put him about right here on the wall with a Thompson machine gun. And he was not only to signal to everybody else that this was going to start off, but he was also instructed to shoot through the window at the door that the inmates were using to get from the tower to the guards' catwalk. And directly across from that door was the 2 cells that the 19 guard hostages were being kept in. And throughout this whole thing, these guards were constantly being threatened by them. And so we didn't want them coming back through the door and shooting the hostages. So we started to shoot through the window at the door. And if you look at the top window above me, all the brick is chunked out on either side. That's the living history that you can still see of those Thompson machine gun bullets going through that window. When that Thompson machine gun started to go off, it was the signal for a National Guardsman to come out of that tower with that bazooka that you guys saw after. Now he was about 19 years old at the time, really nervous. It was his first kind of like altercation that he was in involving the National Guard, but he was a damn good shot, so we gave him a chance. And so he comes out of the tower with that bazooka, but you see the handrail that's up there? Well, he dropped that bazooka out of his nervousness, and it set his sights to 900 meters. So when he pulled the trigger on the first shot, it actually went through this gap that you see of the wall tower and the cell house, and it went out into town. So he realized what he did. He went back into the tower, still a little nervous, fixed his sights, knocked off the coffee pot he still hasn't paid for. And then he shot the tower.
Twice.
And then they realized that, hey, these guys are probably using the topmost room that has a very small window that only looks out onto the cell house roof. And so if you look at the very, very top of the tower, you'll see an indentation with some discoloration of the bricks. That is the third shot. Now, these weren't actual bazooka rounds, guys. If they were, I wouldn't have a tower. Okay? We weren't trying to kill them, we were trying to disorient them. And so these were like concussion grenade type, flash grenade type rounds. Okay? Now that was also the signal for 40 National Guardsmen to run across the yard from Max through the wall, go up into the second tier of the cell house, and get all 19 guard hostages out into safety. Now from the time that the Thompson machine gun bullets started coming out of that gun, to the time that all 19 guard hostages were taken out into safety, it only took them about 4 minutes. It takes me longer to explain. Okay, they were very fast. So, now that you know what happened with all the guards and everything, now we're going to talk about the inmates. Oh man, we got a big group. We're going to do it out here, and then you're going to go up. And you don't have to go up right now, okay? I'm not taking everybody up. This is a big group, and that is a small room. But part of your ghost tour tonight is you get to go into certain areas of the prison that the public is not allowed. One of them is the Death Tower. Now, the Death Tower is not called that because of the '59 riot. It is because when Spanish flu and tuberculosis started rolling through here and we had nowhere to put those guys, guess where we put them?
In that tower.
In that tower, to die. I always tell the men that walk into this tower, please, 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 hold the handrails. I got things I like to push in here. Okay?
Oh boy.
And they, like women, they don't treat men very well.
All right, very, very reassuring.
If we're going to talk about these guys and what happened, you got to know kind of their history behind them. Okay? First of all, I can chalk Lee Smart up to a psychopath. Okay? This is really easy. He came to this prison at 16 years old for beating a guy to death with some lineman pliers just because he wanted $100 that was in his pocket in his car for a joyride. We good? Okay. The other one, Jerry Miles, is a little bit deeper. He was never really loved, wanted, or accepted in his life. His parents didn't want him when he was born. They gave him to his aunt and uncle. By the time he's 6 or 7 years old, he actually runs away from his aunt and uncle's house. And by the time he's 11, he gets picked up and put in a boys' home. By the time he's 12, he escapes from that boys' home and starts his life of crime, usually for burglary and forgery. And he was throughout some of the most notorious jails and prisons throughout the United States, including Cook County Jail in Illinois, MSP in Atlanta. And he heard about our convict boss program that we had here at MSP, or from his time in Alcatraz. So when he gets out of Alcatraz, he travels to Butte, Montana, robs a hardware store, and then sits down on the curb and waits for the cops. Because he was institutionalized. The inside of prison was home. The outside is weird, right? And so when he got out of Alcatraz and came here, he became a convict boss. And what a convict boss was, where you were literally the boss of other convicts in an industry. So he ran the upholstery shop that was right on the other side of this wall. And with that came a lot of time out of your cell, a lot of favors. He would look at some of these inmates and go, if you want your job next month, you'll pay me this much or somebody else will. So you could see the power and privileges that came out of this. But when Warden Powell walked into this place, he took away the convict boss system, and that did not sit well with Jerry, because Jerry went from being this big convict boss to water duty. And that really doesn't sound so bad until you realize that all the wall towers didn't have toilets, they had buckets. And so it was Jerry's job to go around to those towers and clean out their buckets. So he literally went from being this big convict boss to scraping shit out of a bucket, and it did not sit well with him. The other reason that these guys rioted at the time was because of the parole board system. Some of these guys were getting paroled, they'd be in their civilian clothing, being standby at Tower 7, and then when the parole officer didn't come by 5 o'clock, they would wrap them back in their inmate outfits, put them back into their cells, and some guys were here months after they were paroled. So they were not happy. But there was only about 35 to 40 of them that were running around doing this riot. The rest of the inmates were locked up and treated almost as bad as the guard hostages. Okay? And now comes the story where I tell every tour group we're just all going to be adults and realize that we're in prison, right? Okay. So Jerry Miles and Lee Smart were actually lovers. And I don't mean just to go in your cell and get your rocks off kind of lovers. I mean this is a fully documented by guards and the warden himself that this was a full-blown, loving, committed relationship between these two. And that comes into play with this story because I always like to play the human side of this. And so the story I'm about to tell you, if you do your research, you're probably going to come across 3 or 4 different stories, okay? The one thing I can guarantee 150% without a doubt is that none of us were here that day and in this tower, okay? But I was a guard for a couple years at the new prison. And while I was there, one of the gentlemen who was the last 4 of the inmates in this tower was a guy by the name of Carl Frodsham. And I was able to sit down with Frodsham himself when he was 73 years old and talk to him about what happened in this tower. So, does he have an opportunity to lie to me? Yeah. Do I think he did lie to me? No. Why? He's not going to get in trouble for it. It's already done and over with. He's missing a leg from diabetes, sitting in a wheelchair, and he knows he's not getting out of the prison for the rest of his life. So why lie? Right? And why lie to some kid in a garden uniform? Anyway, so there are 4 inmates in this tower at the end. Jerry Miles, Lee Smart, Carl Frodsham, and another guy by the name of Herman Cardinal. Now we're going to talk about 3 of them, but we will not be talking about Herman. Why? Because when they shot the bazooka at the tower and hit it, he was leaning up against that window, and it sent him across the room to the concrete wall opposite. He hit his head on it, knocked him out for the rest of the ride. So we just don't talk about it. Okay, but we will talk about the other 3. And now this was actually an escape attempt. They wanted to take some cooks from Cook Row, which they did, put them in the bottom of this tower and told them to dig. The idea was we're going to take some guard uniforms. We're going to dig under the cell house, under the wall, to a storm drain that leads out to the Clark Fork River. We're going to have those uniforms on and we're going to get away scot-free. Sounds like a good plan. And they actually made it pretty far. They made it to the foundation of the cell house. And then they found out that, damn, Conley built this place to last, because that goes 4 feet underground. And then Jerry knew, even if I get through that, I still got another 30 feet until I hit the wall, and that goes 3.5 feet underground. And even if I get through the wall, I got to make it to a storm drain that doesn't exist. Okay, so it was a failed plan from the get-go. And when they found this out, Jerry Miles and Lee Smart actually made a suicide murder pact together. They were not going to go to the hole, and they were not going to go to the noose. They were going to go out their own way.
By 2:30 in the morning of April 18th, 1959, the power to the prison was cut, leaving Jerry Miles, Lee Smart, and Carl Frodsham in complete darkness. With the looming threat of being caught by the Montana National Guard members that were storming the prison to regain control and capture the rioters, Jerry Miles shot Lee Smart in the head, sending him down a set of stairs that leads to the very top of the tower. After confirming the death of Smart with Carl Frodsham, Miles would turn the gun on himself, taking his own life, officially bringing the 1959 riots to an end. Carl Frodsham would be captured by the Montana National Guard, as well as many of the other rioters during this time. In October of 1959, a jury would find Frodsham guilty of the charges brought against him and his involvement in the 1959 riots, and he'd be sentenced and placed within the Montana State Penitentiary, where he now spends his life. The bodies of Jerry Miles and Lee Smart would be violently removed from the tower in which they barricaded themselves before being buried in a local Deer Lodge cemetery alongside other deceased inmates of the prison. The tower, still covered in the guilt, the fear, and even the darkness of this prison's history, still carries the final moments of Smart and Miles, causing this to be one of the most active spots in the prison. And thanks to the chilling paranormal team and Addison himself, our team, as well as many of the other teams that came to this hunt, had access to this tower and many other parts of the prison that are normally blocked from public access. And now comes the moment we've been anticipating for nearly a year. Our official second hunt at the old Montana State Prison.